Hello, welcome back to Mtambo's Desk, a weekly podcast covering cryptocurrency, business, and technology topics from all over the world. My name is Jakub Mtambo, and in today's episode, we are going to discuss about the Great Recession and the rise of Bitcoin with a special guest and a long friend, Jakub Simek, who is a co-founder of Recession DAO and a grant manager at Slovak agency. First of all, if you enjoy listening to Mtambo's this podcast, please subscribe, like this episode, leave a comment below, and turn on the notification bell for more new episodes. Well, let's get started. Hi, Jakub. How are you doing?
Hi, hi, Duke. I'm fine. Enjoying my evening here in Bratislava. So, yeah, I was the whole day. Actually, it's Sunday, but the whole day I was working on writing some papers. So,
Oh, wow.
just like trying. But yesterday we had some socializing, like two family meetings in one day. So it was nice.
That's nice.
What about you?
I'm doing well here in Voi, Kenya, and it's getting warmer and warmer every day. The temperature is rising, but so
We have the opposite situation here.
yeah. Actually, I was in another meeting yesterday about the DUT. So they normally have a weekly meeting. So I was saying the same thing, and they were saying that it's opposite. It's now approaching winter from their side.
Nice.
Yeah. Anyway, let's dive into today's episode. And as I introduced the episode, we are going to discuss about the Great Recession and the rise of Bitcoin. So considering the acceleration of the launch of Bitcoin and other digital currencies, how do you see the future of traditional money? And are we heading towards a cashless society? And maybe does Bitcoin have risks compared to its advantages?
Okay. So yeah, Bitcoin is like digital gold. That's like the main application. And as we discussed previously, like it's like a V3. So like the V1 is the actual gold. V2 is like fiat that actually conquered or has beaten gold. Actually, there was during the FDR times in the US, there was like a gold seizure a law, and actually gold is traceable. You can have metal detectors, and you can seek out and seize gold. So then there was like this fiat system, Bretton Woods system for decades. And since the financial or the great financial crisis, we've seen the rise of alternatives like Bitcoin. So Bitcoin actually was a direct reaction to the great financial crisis. So, and so the main application is digital gold of Bitcoin, but of course you still need some cash because it's like okay, you can save in Bitcoin. It flipped many fundamental premises. It's like it has a stable monetary policy. It has a stable it has a limit of how many Bitcoins can be minted and mined, in total 21 million. So it's like a V3, like a digital gold, but you still need other currencies as well, like some cash, maybe some stablecoins or CBDCs or other tokens in the future. So yeah, cash cash is king, especially in hard times like recession. But Bitcoin and also Bitcoin Lightning and kind of you can pay also with Bitcoin now, thanks to Bitcoin Lightning, and actually you can. Cash is kind of hard to carry if you have loads of it, or if the inflation is too high and the money becomes worthless. So, but you can carry your Bitcoin just like in your head, basically, just remembering the mnemonic phrase or some 12 words, and you can, for example, if you're a refugee and you need to leave for some reason, your country or domestic country, your home country, so you can take Bitcoin with you anywhere, just remembering, let's say, 12 words. So yeah, it's a great asset.
Okay. So while some analysts remain optimistic about the outcome, multiple signs indicate that we are almost in a global recession. The question now is, what are the most alarming events indicating that a worldwide financial crisis would happen soon? Also, how would a potential recession impact Bitcoin?
Yeah, that's a great question. There are many warning signs. Okay, the rising inflation, the disruptions of supply chains because of COVID, and now because of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. The commodities prices are rising. The food prices are rising, and just it's like a positive feedback loop or vicious cycles where the Fed and other like central banks, they need to raise rates just to tame the inflation, because that's like kind of the only tool they have left now in the in their toolbox. So but they they inevitably will break the back of the economy, and it's kind of very high probability that next year there will be a recession. And what was interesting this year was like the especially the tech stocks kind of tanked, and a lot of markets are down, right? But the tech stocks are even more down, and Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies were also quite down, and which was a bit surprising for people because they thought that like Bitcoin is a hedge against inflation, and I still believe, and many people still believe, it is a hedge of inflation, but for against inflation. But the issue was that thanks to COVID and all those stimulus checks, there was a lot of free money, you know, and the interest rates were so low, so people had a very high risk appetite, and a lot of people were just like putting in the West, you know, these like stimulus money into various cryptocurrencies, risky assets, NFTs, and of course this bubble kind of, bubble, or I don't want to call it bubble like being negative about it, but it kind of burst this year. So last year it was like the all-time high and was great. This year it's a bit difficult, but thanks to this fixed monetary policy of Bitcoin, it's still a great hedge for rising inflation, especially if you save in it and you just put some small monthly savings into Bitcoin. Yeah, I think it will rise again, of course, next year probably, or in some not the too distant future. So,
okay, talking about the hedge, what do you think? I mean, will the state manage to keep inflation in check during a recession? in this recession, or rather?
Okay. Yeah. Well, there is this like graph that shows that the Fed has a harder and harder time to actually rising rates. Well, they can raise rates even maybe to 5% or something, but this will break the economy and cause a recession. And they can't. What will happen then is that the debt service becomes really expensive. You know, like for governments to borrow and to keep borrowing, and many governments have these short-term notes, or like they need to borrow like regularly. You know, well, like every couple of months or something like that. So, and the cost of servicing the debt rises, so they can't keep those rates too high for long, you know, because then even yeah, it's just there is not enough room for it. So they will need to, and also for political reasons, you know, you don't want to keep people suffering for too long. So this kind of cycle will repeat again, you know, then there will be again this quantitative easing and pouring of liquidity into markets and into economy, and lowering of rates. So like this graph from the 80s or something like shows that the rate hikes are smaller and smaller, you know. So it's like in the 80s they were really high, and now it's like maybe 15% even, and now it's just like shorter and lower, shorter and lower. So now this rate hike will again probably be just like smaller and shorter than the previous ones. So yeah, but it means that inevitably the inflation, not inevitably, but it's very high probability that the inflation will escape or will grow again in some not too distant future, in a couple of years or some, or maybe they will not even be able to beat it now. So I don't know.
Okay, and so with major disruptions fueled by the COVID-19 pandemic, also the Russia-Ukraine conflict, and the high rates of inflation, will Bitcoin demand increase with fiat inflation?
Yeah, I mean, it's also Balaji talks about how Bitcoin is for the powerless and the power users, you know. So it's like kind of strange, and people don't get it, you know, because it's like many people say like Bitcoin is kind of like useless because you can't buy coffee with it or something. Now you can with Bitcoin Lightning, and we've seen these videos from El Salvador. You can pay in McDonald's. Also, I personally bought pizza here in Bratislava with Bitcoin Lightning.
Wow.
It worked. It's maybe still slower than paying with credit card, or I mean debit card, or by M-Pesa. I don't know. I can compare. I haven't had this experience for some time. Maybe you can correct me on that, but it's pretty fast with Bitcoin Lightning, so it's fine. But the powerless and the power user, okay, so the powerless are like people in Venezuela, and if you depends on what is your perception about the future. If you believe that similarly like Balaji and others, that we are heading for quite a decentralization in the West, especially maybe China being the exception of a centralizing country in a decentralizing century, and so we will experience decentralization in the West, meaning something like we will not there is this phrase of getting to Denmark by Francis Fukuyama, but I think we will be like getting to Venezuela. It's like kind of the opposite. And so there will be more and more powerless people who would seek something like Bitcoin to protect their assets, their just their, not just their wealth, but like anything, you know, like from the inflation, but also from crime and Yeah, so I believe this is the powerless use case. So like it's proven, you know, people in Venezuela use Bitcoin, mine Bitcoin. They use Bitcoin to pay for medicines, for example, or yeah. So it's and if you believe that the world in many places will look more and more like Venezuela, then I think this use case will rise, and or you can assume that this use case will rise. And the power user is like the opposite use case. But it's like people who are investors and who want to, like, let's say, make 1,000 transactions, like, or yeah, a couple of hundred transactions of like, I don't know, in a couple of seconds, and they can do it, they can program. So it's like this DeFi, maybe DeFi use case, but it's also possible thanks to Bitcoin. Like we have these companies like Strike that do remittances and that do these cross-border payments using Bitcoin and Bitcoin Lightning. And so the power users are, let's say, like these venture capital investors who want to, let's say, invest 1 million into some project or crowd fund something globally. So yeah, these are these two use cases of digital gold, or with Bitcoin Lightning also, like payments and remittances, transfers, global transfers. Yeah.
Mm. Okay, nice. So in 2020, we saw a rapid adoption of Bitcoin with institutions and also countries like El Salvador and Central African Republic. Could government nationalization of, say, cryptocurrency or Bitcoin be a bigger threat, in your opinion?
Yeah, I mean, it is a threat. Also, Balaji talks about it. It might be something that will flip like the political axis, or will shift the political axis by like 90 degrees. So it won't be like left and right, but it will be like up and down. And he makes the distinction between like Bitcoin maximalist so they will be like the orange, and the green will be like these anarcho-primitivists, or like extreme environmentalists who want degrowth and who want like the civilization to kind of decay, or like get ruined because of environmental reasons. So these are like two kind of polar opposites, but of course you can be somewhere in the middle, kind of more rational. But he sees also this kind of like he calls it like dollar green, so between the statists the Bitcoin orange. So this can shift the political map. If the some governments want to seize Bitcoin, it might actually realign the political map. So here, okay, green could be also this like too much of this environmentalist concerns going too far. That's also one of the big attacks on Bitcoin in some way. But green here also means like this green, like a greenback, like dollar. And this might realign the political map. It will be like the old establishment, also from left and also from right, like the nationalists and socialists, kind of against the internationalists and globalists. So here Bitcoin is both international, and also like yeah, and internationalist capitalists. So, and is also capitalist. Sorry, not globalist, but like, or internationalist globalist. That's the synonym, and capitalist. So that's basically like just rephrasing or quoting Balaji here. So yeah. So someone will try to seize a Bitcoin. But the question is if it will be actually possible. If they will be successful, if the governments will be successful in seizing it, because it's not that obvious. they might damage the price though, if they go after centralized exchanges, it might damage the price. Yeah, but they might not destroy Bitcoin, I think.
Okay, so talking about digital economy, since mid-2020, when we see a renewed increase in the popularity of cryptocurrency as a source of easy profit, avoiding transaction costs and escaping from fiat money inflation, the energy costs associated with mining Bitcoin were revealed in the media. It turned out the Bitcoin mining still uses as much energy as a medium-sized country like Finland on a global scale. Do you think Bitcoin will be a pro-environmental and pro-climate enough to finance future green economic ventures? And is this purely future logical vision, or is it already feasible?
Yeah, it's already feasible because even in El Salvador, they have this like geothermal kind of project like connected to Bitcoin. There are other like projects like some local small natural gas projects. And there is also like this question of Bitcoin can make renewables more efficient and more cost effective, and it can also kind of not just renewables, but generally it can decentralize like energy production and also energy. Energy production, and basically in Bitcoin it can be also thought as a battery in a way, it's like because the energy production and consumption kind of fluctuates. So let's say in during the day or it depends on the weather as well, you don't need let's say during the night you don't need as much energy as during the day, and so Bitcoin helps kind of if there is excess production and not enough demand. It's like you can mine Bitcoin and you can, and the operation, the company, the energy producer becomes more efficient in this way. So they can also become like Bitcoin miners as well. So Bitcoin, okay, it consumes a lot of energy, let's say, compared to proof of stake, like Ethereum, which is fairly new. It's very, very recent. But this proof of work needs to be put into context of, let's say, the whole military, industrial, not just military, but like the whole kind of, let's say, global power projection, let's say, of the US that underpins the US dollar. Because, okay, maybe Visa or MasterCard is like more efficient than Bitcoin or cheaper, but they are enabled, or they operate under assumption that US dollar is secured by men with guns. So it's like the fiat is secured by men with guns and with submarines and missiles and big like military equipment, ships, and so on. So it's like Bitcoin achieved its status without a single shot being fired. It's like it's instead of violence, it uses mathematics to secure the ledger and the whole ecosystem. Yeah, if you calculate the whole cost of, let's say, using fiat, which means also a lot of violence, often unnecessary, but also a lot of hardware and equipment, which is actually not that ecologically friendly. Often like all those institutions and their employees and their cars, and also soldiers use a lot of gasoline and a lot of equipment. So if you calculate all this together, then the Bitcoin and the proof of work, it's not as much, securing, like, let's say, the whole global financial system, being something like the government of governments. Like if Bitcoin gets into, maybe like the price will rise, if it rises into, like, let's say 100,000 to and more, then, or maybe something like 1 million, at least this is what Balaji talks, like if it rises above some certain threshold like this, then people will consider Bitcoin to be like a government of governments or something like that, like a world government, because it keeps all the governments in check, because of this immutable monetary policy. So it can transform also governments to be less violent, and this requires some energy. But like, okay, maybe it's as much energy as people use for their like hair fans or something. So like drying hair dryers. So sorry, hair dryers. So it's like worldwide. So okay, it's quite a lot, but it's comparable, let's say, to hair dryers. At least that's one comparison I heard. But it's not as much when compared to all this military equipment and expenditures, and so yeah. So.
Okay, that's a great insight. Okay, so the success of Bitcoin mining also depends on the difficulty of generating a hash code with certain properties. For example, beginning with a certain number of zeros. Do you think quantum algorithms will defeat Bitcoin mining?
Okay, so this is like beyond my pay scale or something, like, so, but I can just quote what I heard, let's say, from people like Balaji or something. Yes, it can become a threat to Bitcoin and its price if, for example, quantum decryption is available sooner, and let's say to some state actor or something, then the quantum encryption, so there can be like some time delay, and but we've also seen okay, from a different attack, but there could have been a possibility of like quite a sophisticated attack on Bitcoin using like firewall attack, but it didn't happen in China. So we saw recently, like was last year, I think, the banning of mining, BTC mining in China, and okay, it messed with the hash rate somehow, but it didn't affect the Bitcoin that much. It was just temporal change, and the miners moved out of China to other places like the US. And so if China didn't stop or wasn't able to kind of damage Bitcoin, then it can be assumed that no other country will be able to do it easily. But concerning the quantum encryption and decryption and these kind of things, there might be some time window where it's like dangerous for Bitcoin and it might affect the price. But even in case like the Bitcoin is kind of there is some flaw or something, then like the idea of blockchain will never die, because you can there are so many cryptocurrencies now, and they can like kind of, if Bitcoin is attacked, they could provide some kind of refuge to its ledger and somehow compensate or like provide some kind of temporal or protection and continuity. So kind of it won't be. I mean, to completely destroy Bitcoin, you would need to like basically seize all the computers
Yeah.
in the world, and kind of destroy them or something like that. So it's kind of impossible.
Yeah. which is impossible. That's true.
To destroy the ledger, yeah, it's kind of impossible. I think probably it's the ledger, the copy of the ledger, and some Bitcoin notes. Probably they are also in space or something, So it's like it's yeah. You would need to like basically destroy, I guess, the whole internet to destroy Bitcoin.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Following the collapse of Terra, some few months ago, do you think is there a need of, for regulations of private stable coins such as Tether, USD coin, Binance USD, or DAI?
Again, this is like beyond. I mean, okay, I understand there like within like Bitcoin communities there's and crypto more in general there are like various like these fights, let's say the Bitcoin maximalists against the Web3 people, or and the Bitcoin maxis, they call everyone a shitcoiner or something like so. Yeah, okay, like within this I guess well, what you need is smart regulation and decentralized regulation. So lots of regulators. So I think what wouldn't be smart is harmonization. It's like global harmonization, which is the current state that, let's say, there is like SEC, or let's say some other agency in the US regulates something and the EU regulates something, and it's applied globally. That I think it's not a good way how to do it. It's kind of then because it's kind of like not as different as what China is doing, like it's too centralized. But okay, what we need is smart regulators. So I think it would be just great if there are more and more stable coins issued by governments, and then they regulate they are like they set their monetary policies, and it's like more competition instead of like strict regulation. So like that's like just the general point. Of course, you want to protect consumers from like some scams and scammers, but like as I understand the recent meltdown, the problem wasn't so much with the DeFi, but with like a TradFi or kind of like scammers or like Ponzi schemers or something but it was more like a TradFi, but it was wearing the DeFi cloth, it's like a wolf in sheep's cloth. So the problem there, because there are lots of DeFi that wasn't broken, there was the problem usually wasn't with the it wasn't like let's say the Ethereum blockchain got hacked, or there was some like issues with the protocols themselves, but there were issues with like some hedge funds and some like market speculators that tanked usually those currencies, like with some so it was mostly TradFi and some like lending or borrowing, like, and some kind of machinations in get rich schemes and something around these various projects. So that got tanked, but I followed it somehow, but not in great detail. So of course, like some stable coins have better reputation, some have worse, and some and some got hit. So but it's the argument is like no, it's no regulation, or yes, we need to regulate them all, but it needs to be a smart regulation and ideally decentralized. So I think the answer is more stable coins, like local, like city coins, or like many countries should issue their own stable coins.
Oh yeah, talking about smart regulation. The other day I saw EU came up with a with the regulation about USB Type-C for all smartphones, and yeah, and I saw it raised some debates on on also I mean Apple, because iPhone is they use like a lightning cable, and yeah, the next technology innovation was maybe to move us wireless. So I think maybe that is kind of also centralized regulation, which might affect some innovation in future. I think they could have said maybe, can you think of a better way of maybe protecting the consumer or also the environment in a better way. So they will give maybe, for example, the innovators a space where they can think in a better way. So yeah, just on a lighter note, I was just mentioning about that. Talking about
I agree. I mean, there is a like a deeper point about like, okay, if something becomes like commodity, let's say like a USB cable, it's a bit different than when something is still in a stage of like okay, there is this like wordly mapping kind of methodology called wordly mapping. So it's like in a genesis or like a concept stage of innovation, then it's custom build, then it's like product service, and then it's commodity utility. And so if we are talking about cables, yeah, it's more like commodity utility. But I agree, like maybe it's just like the regulation. I just because of one cable or something like, oh they want to reduce the number of cables, but I don't know if it's as smart, but it's not as consequential. Okay, maybe for Apple and Apple fans, and yeah, I agree, like maybe yeah, I mean, maybe it's too much, but it's not as consequential as regulating some really upcoming innovations like blockchains and something, because that's too early. Like it's just like in this conceptual or custom built phase. It's not even like mass adopted, and so to regulate them, it would be too early. The crazy example is like the EU wants to regulate AI, so they are far. I mean, it's also I live in the EU, but we are like far behind, let's say, China and the US in AI, but but the EU wants to be like the best regulator or something of something, and they want to. But in some proposal, and Balaji mentions it as well. So in some proposal, they kind of like wanted to regulate the logic itself. Like there was some Bayesian thinking or something, like some algorithms. So yeah, sometimes it's just a bit too much and kind of silly in a way. Yeah.
mm-hmm. Yeah, I
And
understand.
the cookie, the pop-up banner, the cookie banner is also kind of silly, a silly regulation, GDPR from the EU. It's like what the EU gave to the world. It's like these cookie banners. So it's the example of, yeah, something that is a bit silly. Yeah.
I think EU is leading in coming up with the regulations. They are good at coming up with regulating regulation. I mean, or regulating everything.
Yeah, but they want to compete with China, let's say in Africa or something, but they're very slow in like building and like with project implementation or something. So last time we discussed about this Burning Man versus Building Man, and so maybe they should just like get better at infrastructure building, like with their speed, like let's say build speed trains. Okay, Spain has a lot of speed trains. It's like the second country after China. But if they want to compete with China, maybe they should they should embrace Bitcoin and crypto in general, and be more pro business and pro, okay, smart regulation maybe, and decentralized regulation and small scale experiments, but not this like global harmonization and centralized everything regulation. So it's just my opinion. Like EU is like yeah, falling behind in AI and in crypto, in social. I don't know. We don't have our social network. Chinese have their WeChat and other apps. So yeah.
Okay, talking about regulations, Bitcoin is merely an example of how financial services can be delivered online without intermediaries. Does Bitcoin actually have the capacity to transform the monetary policy in virtual form?
Yeah. As I discussed, like as we discussed just now, if actually there is like more mass adoption, maybe because of inflation, maybe big thanks to Bitcoin Lightning and some other like applications and some companies that use Bitcoin, let's say, for remittances, for global transfers. And then when the price rises, Bitcoin might, maybe also because of the inflation, but the Bitcoin might become something like a worldwide government or the government of governments. And so it will keep governments in check because like everything can then be measured by Bitcoin, which is like immutable and fixed money supply. So yeah, it will transform then the daily lives. Let's say the governments will not be able to print as much fiat as they did before, and they will then be kept in check by Bitcoin. And it also means that they will be less militaristic because wars are expensive, and if you will not be able to borrow easily or print new money because your currency will be then depreciated against Bitcoin, then this will keep governments more peaceful, I guess, as well.
Oh, wow. As we come to the end of this episode, maybe one last question. Do you think Bitcoin, how long do you think Bitcoin bearish will take, or this cycle of bearish?
Okay, it's like this is no financial advice, and like just like but there are like these 4-year cycles, it seems, or something, like these crypto winters come and go, and they usually, and it's also important to realize or understand that even within the bear cycle, there are loads of like spikes or lots of like kind of rallies or something. So it's often difficult to distinguish between is this the end of the bear cycle, or is it just like some kind of like a small rally within this bear cycle which still might push the price down, or so it doesn't mean like the crypto winter is over. And it's very difficult to find out. So I think the best what people can do is just like don't use leverage. It's like what the Charlie Munger or actually Warren Buffett said, like don't use leverage and liquor. So when you're investing, and actually at the beginning I used both, I think. Yeah, so I remember like I don't know when the Ethereum was like still low, but it was like yeah, I was day trading back then, and yeah, I put some like option or like yeah, I mean, I did some trade like with leverage. And then in the morning, I woke up and I was like, I thought it would be up, but it was down, and I lost like 100 euros or something. So I kind of closed the trade, and then I don't know, and then in a day it goes again up. So I was like, I would just advise not to do day trading, not to focus too much on current price. But let's say try to and it's also I'm just still learning how to do this, but just like optimize your personal runway, as Balaji calls it, like try to cut spending and start saving in BTC, and just like even $10 or 1,000 shillings or something a month can be good. And if you do this, like, then it's kind of, you are kind of happy that the Bitcoin is cheap, you know, for a year or a half year or another year, because you can like buy more of it, and then when it goes up, it's like, let's say you're able to save 1,000 shillings a month in BTC, but if it goes up 5x, let's say in a couple of years, I don't know, I can't predict, and this is not financial advice, then you will get like 5x. So you will, it's like if you were saving 5,000 shillings instead of 1,000 shilling. And in case it will go, I don't think it will go to zero, but in case it's like there is some major disruption because of, I don't know, some flaw that we don't know in BTC, which is very unlikely, I guess, but still nothing is 100%. Then in this way, at least you kind of learned how to save money. But I think on a regular basis, like every month. So of course, just put into BTC and this kind of assets only what you can lose, and do like small bets, and on a regular basis, like to maybe on a monthly basis, you could buy some small percentage of your savings, put in BTC, and in a couple of years you might be very happy. I think it's like nothing compares to that, I guess. You know, if you know, the historical performance, it's not the proof of the future performance, or but yeah it's like I don't think there is a better strategy. So like BTC, and maybe then also other like top crypto assets like Ethereum and Solana. So maybe these three I would put some. But BTC is like the digital gold. It will stay like that. So yeah.
Okay. Based on Ray Dalio principle for dealing with the changing world order, we are seeing he thinks that US dollar will fall, and maybe Chinese yuan will rise as the world reserve currency. But we see also some of the Bitcoin maximalists saying that Bitcoin might be the new world reserve currency, or the new future currency of the world. What are your thoughts on that as we wind up?
Okay, yeah. So just shortly, so Ray Dalio, he has this kind of new book out, and he sees the history in kind of like cycles. You know, it's like also Balaji talks like the empire long united must divide, the empire long divided must unite. So it's like there are lots of these cycles. Balaji talks about like the left, the right, and the libertarian cycle of, let's say, a founder starts a company because he left some established big corporations, so he founds a startup, but then the startup grows and it becomes a big corporation, and then there is another employee that leaves that big corporation to found and to establish something new because he is not satisfied of, I don't know, being just a bureaucrat. And in this kind of cycles, the something that is first innovative, or some innovative empire, let's say like the US empire, ossifies and gets like too comfortable. And then there are some competing rivals that are more serious, and they overtake the incumbent, the old regime. And so in a similar way, there is this like funny saying, which is maybe like the right wing version of it, which is like And Balaji talks also about this. It's just like a funny meme from the internet, but like it's like the strong men create good times, the good times create weak men, the weak men create bad times, and the bad times create strong men. So it's like that's like the right wing version. The left wing is kind of similar, like the zealous revolutionaries, I don't know, create a revolution, but then there is some like someone, some bureaucrat or some strongman or something who messes it up, but then again the people rise and they again create some kind of like pressure for reform or for revolution or whatever. So it's like there are like a lot of these kind of like cycles throughout history that repeat themselves, but they're never the same. So it's like the z-axis, or Balaji talks about like helical theory of history. So you never come to the same. It's not like cyclical, but it's like the history doesn't repeat, but it rhymes. So, and in this way, okay, Ray Dalio sees like these like patterns from the history. There are other people who observe this. One invented even a term for it. I think it's called cliodynamics, but it's like observing some quantitative pattern. Let's say the rising debt, and various kind of the rising crime, for example, and these kind of things. And to kind of see if the empires or the civilizations fall and rise. So, and we see this in history, like many civilizations are not with us, and they were once strong. Yeah, and so, okay, so the question is if the BTC versus the Chinese yuan, or the digital yuan versus the US dollar, or maybe something like some digital dollar or CBDC in the future. And the question is about also about the soft power and what people are excited about. So like how many people are excited about Chinese yuan? I mean, you might own it. I'm not like against Chinese or something, but Chinese are the current Chinese regime is kind of like nationalistic, a lot and militaristic as well, and it's not as great at soft power, let's say, as the US or the EU, but they're very good at hard power, like at building an infrastructure and stuff. So they are quite admirable in technologies, like they are very good at copying and even innovating on various technologies. So they're great, but like they are not like internationalists and capitalists. They used to be capitalists under Deng and Hu Jintao, but now under Xi Jinping, they are not as capitalists, and so people are not, I guess. Maybe you can tell me as well, but I think all around the world, people are excited about internet, getting online, and they're excited about internet money, which is like a Bitcoin or crypto, and so like the orange coin is like the new blue jeans. That's what Balaji says as well. So it's like Bitcoin represents freedom and capitalism, internationalism, like win-win relationship. So I think at least in the West and in the what was once known as third world countries or the non-aligned movement, like India or parts of Africa, I think Bitcoin will win. But China is very serious and strong, so nobody knows. But it's possible that the Bitcoin will win over both the China and the US, or the digital yuan and the US dollar. So we'll see. We'll see.
Okay. Okay, Bitcoin it represents the freedom. Okay, thank you, Jakub, for your time, and again for coming back to Mtambo's Desk podcast. That brings us to the end of this episode. Thanks for joining me, and I hope the episode was beneficial to our viewers and listeners. So please give these episodes a thumbs up and rate it on Spotify, Google, and Apple Podcasts. And be sure to come back next week, Monday, for another episode. Until then, this is Jakub Mtambo, and don't forget to do good always.